This is one of my favorite words, olfactory or olfaction. Olfactory receptors we've mentioned in a previous video already, but this is the sense of smell that we're talking about. Olfactory receptors are found in the epithelium of the nose. They provide your sense of smell, and they have little cilia that contain the receptors. Now, what's really interesting is that each one of these receptors only kind of responds to a specific chemical in the environment. So you actually have dozens, if not hundreds of or thousands of different types of receptors, each one sensitive to a different kind of chemical that's there. Another really interesting thing is the connection between smell and taste. I'm sure you've all seen experiments or have tried some things or realized when you're sick and your nose is all stuffed up like this little fellow right here, it's harder for you to actually taste certain things. Some people claim, and I actually tried this once and I couldn't stop laughing, claim that biting into a raw potato and biting into an apple will produce the exact same flavor and sensation if you have no use of your nose. And you have to do a really good job to try to block that off. But your nose plays a role in what you can taste as well too. If you like cooking, and I like to imagine that I like cooking, that is the kind of stuff that I think about as well too. So olfaction means the sense of smell. We can only detect chemicals that can move through the air with our nose, even in low concentrations. Seems really awesome that we can detect all these things. It's more sensitive than our tongue, right? Because when you're in a public bathroom and you can smell the nastiness going on in there, you smell it, but you don't taste it. And when you try to plug your nose, you still have to breathe, so those chemicals are still landing on your tongue. But because your tongue is not as sensitive to those chemicals, you aren't actually tasting it, thank goodness. Otherwise, you'd probably be closing your mouth and just sucking it up through the nose, literally, just so that you can stay alive in those public bathrooms that are poorly maintained. So even though we can detect things and these chemicals in low concentrations, we're still pretty weak compared to some animals, like this little fellow over here. His nose is a lot more sensitive and they can detect a lot more chemicals, even in lower concentrations than we can. And as I mentioned before, each receptor only detects one type of odorant. Each of these receptors is therefore coded by different genes. So you're producing a huge variety of different types of receptors to be sensitive to different types of chemicals that are in the air. And I also talked about how we can detect the food in the mouth, and it does play a role in what we taste. I feel very hungry right now. It's almost lunchtime. Enjoy.